Question I have for you is, what have you learned as a college recruiter in the last year and a half that maybe kind of surprised you on the positive end and maybe on the not so positive end, something that's taking you time to maybe get used to?
Well, the one thing, obviously, living in Charlotte and having my own organizations, coaching and recruiting, it was recruiting on a different level. The persistence that comes with coaching college and recruiting. I mean, there's no downtime. You got to be by your phone 24 hours of the day and be willing to pick up the call and talk to kids and just have general conversations. And that's the thing that I've noticed that's a little different, and then with doing the NFL internships, it's just completely different. But me having 5 kids, I was sort of prepared for it and ready and have been accustomed to it. So it's been an easy transition for me. So that's the one difference I would say, the recruiting, talking to coaches all day, every day, taking, highlight tapes and people sending you stuff all day, every day once they know that you're coaching, and just being able to look at all that stuff and making yourself available. That's been the one difference I would say. And so for me, it's been all good. There's no really bad for me because, as you guys know, I'm very social. I like to interact with people. I like to have a good time. And so it all falls in the lines of what I like to do.
That kind of sort of answers my follow-up is, what do you like the most about the fact that every day you're kind of having to do this as a big part of your life now?
Well, me, as you said, I'm really proactive and I love interaction. So just the mentoring part, me getting involved here in Charlotte and coaching the youth and having my youth organizations. The one reason why I pursued coaching at a collegiate level or professional level was because of the mentorship and having a chance to tell my story, to have a chance to help these guys accomplish what I've done, what my peers have done. That's the beauty of it for me. I want these guys to have a chance to be better than me, to do everything that I did and gain some of the things I was able to accomplish. And so that's the great part about it for me, is the mentoring. And because I didn't have the opportunity to be around guys such, as myself and some of the guys that I played with. And so me giving all the information to those guys and helping those guys have a chance to fulfill their dreams is the best part of it for me.
All right, Kiara, we'll move on to you. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm doing good. Where are you? Let me see. There we go. Okay.
My quick question for you is just talk a little bit about social media. You have been killing it on social media and kind of being leveled with these guys, as connected with them that way. Talk about how you've been using social media to your advantage in recruiting, and has that been beneficial for you?
I mean, again, I have kids, so I've been forced to understand Instagram and Twitter a little bit more so probably than some of these, other parents and coaches. But, when I retired and wanted to sort of seek broadcasting, and, I was telling somebody earlier, I did an NFL broadcasting boot camp, and I was covering the Panthers in Charlotte doing a weekly show with WFNZ. I was forced to sort of get more involved on Twitter and Instagram. And yes, I have used it to my advantage. Again, having kids coming through the recruiting game and just utilizing that to the best of my ability, and knowing that I have people that's following me, I try to, sell myself a little bit, because that's the one thing with coaching. People always just say that, in hating against, the University of North Carolina against me, they'll say that, well, Dre hasn't been coaching. Players can't transition from, playing to coaching. And so partly how I use social media, I've been training, been mentoring guys for a while. I just show what I do. And in some sense, it has helped me. But again, right now we're trending in social media. And any way that I can sell our program and sell University of North Carolina, I'm going to do so.
And how has, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Go ahead.
How has, you are connected with everybody, and how has that been for you? Using your connections as far as people that are in the league and, like your connection with Virginia, how has using your connections benefited from recruitment side?
Well, again, other schools and coaches that say, XYZ about Coach Brown, about Dre, about somebody on our staff. And what I do, I feel like I bring a different element to coaching because of the things I've been able to do. I can pick up the phone and call many different guys. The brotherhood that we share, the fact that those guys are rooting for me, the fact that those guys want to see more of us coaching because we feel like we have so much to offer. I just utilize it, man. I utilize the relationship, with Fred Winfield, me being a Brand Jordan athlete. My relationship with Jordan is, and the brand is different. And I utilize how that was able to happen. And the reason why that was able to happen, a big part of it, was because I attended University of North Carolina. So I use all of those relationships to my advantage. Playing on a Super Bowl winning the Super Bowl and playing for the St. Louis Rams, and all the relationships I have with that. I use that to my advantage. Torrey Holt, who's a competitor, played on the other side of town. He went to, NC State, but he's one of my best friends. So I use all of those relationships to my advantage because in hindsight, I really feel like guys can relate with those guys. And, I trained Stephon Gilmore. I've worked out with him. And so I just try to use all of that to my advantage because at the end of the day, we have to sell ourselves. And I think the more you sell yourself, the better off you are.
All right, we'll go to Ross. Ross Martin, go ahead.
Hey, Coach Bly. Kind of similar to what Andrew asked, but are there any nuances to recruiting that you just didn't realize was going to be a factor, whether that be in how UNC builds classes, how you offer, how you recruit a kid, or just things that people from the outside don't know that you maybe didn't realize about recruiting that stood out or stands out right now?
Well, there's different nuances that comes with recruiting that, I had to adjust to in the beginning. Again, living in Charlotte and, I've come in contact with a lot of kids over the last 10 years here in Charlotte with me having, 2 older boys who played every sport there is and me coaching all of those sports. And so, but just going through the process of what different coaches like. Everybody has different things that they like. Just like as a defensive back coach, my qualities and what I like in a position is going to be different from the next guy. And so just understanding that, not letting my emotions get too caught up because I'm going to have personal relationship with a lot of guys here in Charlotte based on me knowing those guys the last 10 years and me understanding that I have to let that go and understand the big picture of things. And so that was probably the biggest adjustment for me. But it's been good, man. Just, being on the staff and learning from guys like Thig and, Coach Bateman, Coach Brown, and just listening to those guys, picking their minds and taking what I know and what I feel like I'm good at and combining it with those guys know. I just been open-minded and it's been great for me, man. I'm always looking to learn. I'm not one of those guys that feel like I know it all. I try to take as much as I can from each coach and try to use it in my style and me forming who I'm going to be as a coach and as a recruiter.
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, and obviously you're from the Tidewater area. What how do you think the recruiting of UNC kind of getting back in the Tidewater area has gone so far, and what responses have you gotten to the new Mack Brown era in the Tidewater area of Virginia?
Well, I've been one of those coaches, as you guys know, who follow me on social media. I'm quick to drop a line, Mack is back. Every time I tweet something, but the response has been good back in the 7-5 to myself being hired and Mack. And I think those guys are aware that when we were rolling at the level that we were rolling at, the Tidewater area played a tremendous part in our success. Whether we had 5 guys or whether we had 1, we played a tremendous role in what we're able to do. And so I think they responded well to it. They knew, like, when I got hired that I was going to hit the area. I'm the biggest 7'5" 7 guy there is. I give a lot of tribute to my success from from me being from where I am, but I want to take back over the state. I feel like during that time, some of the best guys came to the University of North Carolina, and I want to get back to claiming that right and making our presence known back in the 7-5. But they are very aware. I think those guys was happy when Coach Brown was hired back because they knew how his teams were built when he was there, when he was at Carolina 20-some years ago. And once I got hired, they knew that we were going to have a strong impact in the area. And so me having a chance to go home and see my mother and father and see family and recruit, for me, it's like a dream come true.
Good, Rolf.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, up next, we got Eric. Eric, do me a favor and just identify yourself for today as not being a regular.
Yeah, sure. I'm Eric Boynton with the Spartanburg Herald Journal in South Carolina. And Coach, I just wanted to ask you, I'm right down the road from Storm Duck country here. And I wanted to ask you about how quickly you realized that Storm had the type of ability and demeanor to be an immediate contributor as a true freshman.
Well, when I first saw Storm, I knew he had the measurables to play college football. He was a bigger guy that can run. He was strong, talented. But, Storm, and this is the thing I love about Storm, I just wasn't sure in the beginning, right? I think Coach Brown was one of the first ones to recognize the ability in Storm and made it a necessity, made it a need for Storm to play right now. And once I saw some of his qualities and was able to see it, I knew that Storm was going to contribute and help us out tremendously in his first year. But Storm was a guy that came in with a great mindset. He's smart. He worked every day. I was able to see growth throughout the year, from the first day to the last day. I was telling my corners the other day, it was a tremendous adjustment, a tremendous change from what they looked like from the very first game to what we were looking like the last 3 or 4 games of the year. And it was a tribute to those guys' work ethic. It was a tribute to those guys' confidence, their dedication. And Storm was one of those guys who was right at the top. I think the biggest thing with Storm and why he had the year that he had, once Storm believed in himself, once Storm got past the jitters of I'm being a freshman, right? And that I'm new to this game and new to the ACC. Once he got past that, Storm was going to be fine. Storm staying healthy, and God willing, Storm is going to be a pretty good football player, in my opinion, in this ACC. If he continue to progress, man, I'm excited what the future holds for Storm.
Anything to follow up with, Eric?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Great. All right, move on to Greg Barnes. Greg, go ahead.
Hey, Dre, you mentioned earlier about catching some flack on social media because your lack of coaching experience. And that was a concern for some in the media and some in the fan base when you started last year. Just curious about your transition into a position coach. Obviously, you know it better than most, but how was that transition in terms of connecting with the players and teaching them technique and those types of things?
Well, I mean, I was talking earlier. I made a lot of plays in the NFL, and I wasn't so-called the fastest. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the longest. The reason why I made those plays because I feel like I was very smart. I was a smart football player. I learned. I was able to see a lot of things. I had a vision for certain things, and it wasn't just in college. I did the same thing in the NFL. I did the same thing in college, and so I just got better, I think, as I got older. And I felt like those are things that you just don't wake up with, and so I knew I would be able to provide that to my guys. And I'm one of those guys, Greg, that I get motivated by the haters. I knew people was going to be questioning Coach Brown hiring me and what. So, but Coach Brown did his homework. He was following me on social media and seeing some of the things I was doing in the community. And I had took the measures of, doing the internships in the NFL. So once that was validated and I got over that hump, I knew that I was going to do fine. It was just a matter of me getting an opportunity. and I just use all that for my advantage. And so, but I'm telling you, Greg, it's a lot of, there's a lot of people that say former players can't coach because of the transitioning part, and we don't want to put in the time. That's the biggest thing. It's not football, in my opinion. It's the time that comes with coaching. The X's and O's part of that, in my opinion, we can do just as good as any other dude that's out there coaching. It's just a matter of us doing it. And so once I knew that I can do it and I was going to be fine at it, for me, man, like, I can take off at doing what I'm doing, and that's the mindset that I have. And I knew I would be able to help JB and what he was trying to teach, and do the best I can do for my position. That's the only thing I was really focused on, is making sure that my corners was prepared and that those guys knew their position and knew their plays. And that's the only thing I was worried about in my first year coaching.
Anything to follow with, Greg?
Yeah, I do. And you were kind of put in a bad situation last year because Patrice got hurt. Trey Morrison had some injuries. You just had a lot of guys like that you had to bring Storm into play. You had to bring Greg Ross into play. With confidence being such a key component of that position, do you get to a point where you've got to coach up the confidence aspect more so than maybe some of the other things?
I'm coaching them confidence every day. Every day. To me, I mean, that's the most to me, that's the most critical thing that you have to play the cornerback position. Confidence, and you got to have short-term memory. The two keyest components, the best possible things you can have to play that position. And so I'm constantly coaching that up every day. Storm, that might have been the least thing that he had coming in, being a true freshman. Most true freshmen are going to come in having doubts and a bit, they're going to be a little insecure. And but not just Storm, just all the guys. They haven't done particularly too well the last couple of years. And me coming in, that was going to be the first thing I was going to try to restore with those guys. And as you guys know, I'm a very confident individual. I always believe I'm going to win. I don't care what the opposition looks like. I feel like I'm going to win. And if you do lose, that's okay, but we're going to bounce back. And so that was the one thing that I had to restore with those guys. So I'm constantly teaching that every day. I talk a lot of trash. I'm very competitive. I hate to lose in anything I do. And so I wanted my DBs to have that mindset. I wanted those guys to have that mentality. And I think as the year progressed, we got better in that area, and we were more loose, which allowed us to make plays.
Luke Buxton heading your way here.
Hey, Coach. I think you have an interesting perspective as a former player and now coach. We had Mac Brown on here talking about the new NIL policy, the new proposed policy by the NCAA, and kind of given your experience with a large following on social, and you just talked about your relationship with the Jordan brand. How would you kind of view those the new NIL legislation, players being able to monetize off their name, image, likeness, from a player's perspective when you were at UNC back in the day versus now as a coach? And Coach Brown talked a lot about like guidelines and rules. I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on the issue.
Man, that's over my head, dude. Like I try to stay in my lane, and that's coaching the cornerbacks, right? Like with me being a new coach, I can't take on too much. That's when I need to stay walking down that line that I know I can do, and I allow Coach Brown and the rest of the experts to worry about the other areas. But I can't even, when they get talking like that and about that stuff, I start looking over here, bro, because that's out of my league. I just stay in my lane. You know what I'm saying? I do what I do well, and that's coach the corners how to make plays and to hopefully not get beat much. So I stay in that lane.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I appreciate the question, though, but
Yeah, of course.
that's out of my league, bro.
I feel you.
All right. We'll go to Gregory Hall. Go ahead, Gregory.
Coach, I'm curious how the depth issue that y'all experienced last year maybe affected some of your expectations you had for the corners, and how you think it's going to improve for 2020, having more guys back there, healthier, having Patrice back, and whatnot, how it's going to help you as a coach and how you expect it to help your players for the season.
Hey, Gregory, That's a great question, dude. And that's a good question. So let me tell you how it impacted us last year. You know, we had KJ Sales who transferred. We had Patrice Renee that towards ACL early. We had Trey Morrison that got hurt the first game. And so you started to look around, man. You know, your numbers, you're limited. You know, you had Bryce Watts and Caleb and Michael that transfer in, but they were off limits. You know, we couldn't touch those guys. But, you know, we were sort of looking around. We had to move some pieces around and be forced to play packages with 3 linebackers. You know, with having D. Ross and Surratt and Gimble out there together and not, you know, playing with 5 corners or 5 DBs. And so we were moving guys around, man. I think Coach Bateman did a tremendous job in utilizing the pieces that we had. Him coming in from Army and granted now, like for his system, you need certain pieces to be able to execute and to do what he wants to do. And I think it was, you know, genius, like for him to be able to have the success that we had, but not having some of the pieces that we needed. And I think our guys responded well to him last year. You know, having Storm Duck come and play against South Carolina. You know, you talked about, somebody mentioned earlier, the first game of the year and how well he played, you know, holding that receiver who they had, who was a top guy in the SEC, but holding him to, I think, 1 reception. And to start off the season, and then playing Miami the following year and the following week and doing as well as we did. So it was amazing to see what we did with what we had. To be able to go into this year, looking at the depth that we have, having Bryce Watts and Caleb McMichael and Patrice Renee come back, along with the older Storm Duck and Trey Morrison and Day Hollins, man, we're excited, dude. You know, we can do a little bit more, we feel, with, you know, probably more packages with DBs, you know, 6, 7 DBs. And so I know Coach Bateman and I, we're very excited about what that looked like for us. And so it's going to allow us to try different things, and hopefully it'll lead to better matchups for us defensively when we're playing faster teams or teams with multiple receiver packages.
And you mentioned confidence and short-term memory, but obviously for Storm Duck, having to get those extra reps increases confidence. Is it a thing where you kind of want him to remember that and kind of not have that short-term memory aspect, to remember that, look, you were thrown into the fire, you can do this kind of thing?
Oh, no doubt. You know, that was the one thing, you know, with Storm, as I talked about. I wanted Storm to have some swag. You know, I was working with Storm every day on his swag and his body language and, you know, how he walk. And, you know, if you make a play in practice, let me see you celebrate one day. And so that was huge for Storm, because Storm is a very humble guy. You know, he's very reserved. And you know, I always try to revert back to Champ Bailey, because Champ Bailey is a very reserved, humble guy, but Champ expressed himself when he made plays. And so I was telling Storm, it's okay to express yourself and to be loose and have fun. You know, your teammates feed off of that energy. You know, the crowd feeds off of that energy. And so that's one of the things I think Storm would be more consistent at this year. Storm played some good ball, man. And I was proud of him in the bowl game when he got that pick 6, because we worked really hard in him making plays and finding the ball and catching the ball. And you know, the last couple of weeks of the season, I think he got 2 interceptions in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And I tell him all the time, the same thing with Trey Morrison. Interceptions comes in bunches, and it's contagious. And just like my first year when I had all those picks, I tell him, like, it got to a point where I felt like I was a magnet for the football. And that's what it is, you know, with Storm Duck and Trey Morrison, those guys, it comes in bunches. And so, but the easiest way to make plays, in my opinion, you know, you got to be confident. Your swag got to be on 10. And if it's like that every play, then I think that's a great thing. And so I'm excited, you know, what that'll look like next year or this year for Storm.
Move on to JB Ricks. JB, go ahead.
Coach, what's going on, man? We appreciate you taking out time. Hopefully you can see the love. I'm over here. Give it to your former boys from the past.
I see, and I seen you picking out your hair earlier. I wanted to say, pass that pick to me. Jeremy made me go pick my hair before I got on this Zoom call, so I was going to tell you, send me that pick, man.
I got about 3 or 4 on standby, homie, so I will definitely get that to you. I got a two-part question for you. First one, I want to go back to the social media aspect of you being an assistant coach now? You talked about how your family, your kids had already kind of gotten you up on that or whatever before you became an assistant coach with Carolina. But I want to know how much Mack Brown is emphasizing that with all of his assistant coaches to kind of, present that side of your personality, because it is kind of like the cool things for the recruits, and I'm sure it helps in that fashion. How much is Mack Brown filtering that down to all of you guys to be on top of your social media game?
Mack loves it. I think that's the difference in Coach Brown. I tell my former teammates who played for Coach Brown, and even some of the current guys, and some of the other guys I played with in the NFL, they ask me, what is it like playing for Coach Brown? And the first thing I say is, because, again, I have a strong personality, right? And that's not a secret. Mack embraces it, and that's the one thing I love about Coach. He embraces all of our personalities. And that was one of the first things that Coach told me when he got hired. He said, I want you to be yourself. And he for the most part, and Jeremy got to correct me sometimes, and even I gotta proofread my tweets sometimes to make sure, because I'm aggressive, man, and I I love Carolina football, I love my alma mater, so sometimes I want to jab back, but that's the player side coming out of me, and so I always got to go proofread my stuff, because I never want to expose my alma mater. It's all in fun and love, but I got so much love for my school, but Coach embraces what that is for us, and he embraces my personality, and I love that about Coach. And so I feel like that's what makes us everything that we do authentic. We don't have to change who we are. The players that Coach Brown brings in, we don't change who we are. He cleans us up in certain areas, and it teaches us how to move and maneuver, but Coach Brown allow us to be us. And that's what I love mostly about Coach. That's why I think we've been trending so much social media wise. Jeremy's done a good job with that as well. And Billy High with the whole perspective, the whole look of what Carolina football is. But I think that's why we are who we are right now, man. And I love that about Coach. He was not once intimidated or felt like me being who I am was going to bring some negative tension to the program. And I take it, I care about my image as well, and what people see of me at the University of North Carolina, because I never want to bring any negative light or anything on the school because of my competitiveness. But I want to win, man. I want to win. I want our guys to be happy. I want my fellow Tar Heels to be proud to say that they're Tar Heel and feel positive about the direction that we're headed. So it means the world to me. You know what I'm saying? So that's why you see some of the things on social media. Like, it means the world to me that Coach Brown guys that play for Coach Brown are happy.
All right. My second question, a little bit more serious. I want to know from your position as the DB coach, specifically with the players that you're responsible for right now. You don't have to name any names or anything like that, but what are the biggest hurdles that you are seeing them to have to overcome right now through this pandemic? And how has, your work as a father, having to take care of 5 children and, applying whatever lessons you're able to teach them, what lessons have you had to use to kind of teach whatever your position players are going through right now with the pandemic?
We're just dealing with the pandemic right now, the unknown, right? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen with our family? What's going to happen with football? The whole deal with not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow has probably been the biggest adjustment on us as a staff in dealing with our players and me dealing with my kids. And, the one thing I tell our kids, the players and my kids is, as parents, as adults, and us getting to where we've gotten to, there's been obstacles and things thrown in our way. I remember where I was in 2001 dealing with 9/11, and not knowing what that was, or what that meant for me, being in St. Louis, or what was going to happen to our family. There's certain things that happen in our lives for a reason, right? It seems like every 10 years something happened, right? Something, it might be more severe than the next, but how do we respond? How do we deal with it? And so just telling I'm not glad that this pandemic has happened because you don't want to wish any ill will or people dying or family members getting sick. But for the younger generation, you know, those kids rely so much on technology, right? They've gotten my family, my kids, it has forced us to interact, you know, to do things together, which I think was lost a little bit in today's society. You know, it has taught our kids to go outside again and to exercise. And so in that sense, I think it has helped our young generation, right? You know, us going home and still finding a way to move on and to still work out and to train and to go on with life. I think that's been the positive, which I think is good, which is going to help those guys. If something else happening 15 years from now, they'll be better prepared. And so that's the thing, what I'm telling my kids and my players is how you deal with adversity. You know, using this for a plus, using it for, you know, an advantage. And so that's the way I look at it. I use that to inspire me. You know, right now I feel like if we're not working out, dude, we ain't got a chance, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I tell my kids. Like, if you can't stay motivated to work out, then 10 years from now, when everything is rolling, you know, it's gonna be tough. So I use that for me, for my motivation. All right, I need to go outside, even though I might be struggling. I rode 7 miles yesterday. I about died when I got home. You know what I'm saying? But I try to use that to self-motivate myself to go outside and work out. So that's what I do. It's all for self-motivation, and I try to tell my players that.
All right, thanks so much, Coach. Good seeing you, man. Thank you again for this.
Thank you.
All right, we're back to Ross. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quickly here, Coach. Could you give us a scouting report on the 2 transfer corners, Kyler McMichael and Bryce Watt? Obviously, we haven't seen them play at UNC, but they went through a full season of practice. What can they bring next year? What are their talents, and how much do you think they can be an impact in 2020?
Well, first, I'll start with Bryce Watts. You know, he was a guy that played a lot of football at Virginia Tech. You know, he started, I don't know the exact numbers, but, you know, he started, I think, over 10 games in 2 years at Virginia Tech. So he has a lot of reps. So I think leadership, you know, a guy with experience, I think that's big. A guy that, you know, he has swag. He's a confident guy being from New Jersey. But he's a guy that can run. And so I think he has length. So I think he brings that to the position, and he has great ball skills. I think he's a guy that can make plays on the ball. We were able to see some of that throughout the fall on scout team and whenever he was in there. So I know we all excited about seeing him having a chance to compete for a position and playing time. And I know our guys that's coming back, you know, they're very aware of him coming into him stepping into the lineup and him competing for a spot. So I think there's some plus that comes with that. Kyler McMichael is a guy who hasn't yet stepped on the field much. You know, he played as a true freshman some at Clemson, but I mean, have you seen that dude? The dude built like Herschel Walker, man. I mean, he's a guy that got traps and arms, and I mean, he got hamstrings and calf muscles. I mean, he gonna pass the look test. He can run. So we're excited about that, man. You know, he's one of those dudes, when he walks in the room, I mean, all heads gonna turn in his direction because he's, you know, he has that appearance. And so because of that, you know, we're excited to see what he looks like. You know, he's as well has had a chance to compete during the fall on scout team, and he showed some great things. I mean, those are 2 guys, they might be 2 of the fastest dudes on the team. So they will be able to run with a lot of guys out there on game day. So in my opinion, that kind of helps us with the deep ball and playing the deep ball better. So, you know, we're excited about that, man. I think it brings, you know, we can throw out any two or 3 guys between those 2 and Patrice Renee, Storm Doug, Day Hollins, and be happy with the results that we get.
I'm going to have to add that to Kyler's bio. He's got traps and calves.
Have you seen, I know you've seen him, Joe. He got calves and traps, hamstrings, man, his neck. I'm like, dude.
Dre, you crack me up. Andrew.
Now we know what to look for when we get a chance to see him in August.
Look at his hamstring.
You'll see his calves.
Coach, in the last year and a half or so, has there been a moment where you've seen Mac handle something or heard him address something in a way that took you back to when you were playing, and you kind of thought, wow, this is 1996 or 97 to me in a fleeting second? If so, what was it and what were your thoughts about it when you maybe experienced that?
Well, the one thing I love about Coach Brown, and I think in my way, my style of coaching, one of the ways that I've learned how to interact and handle adversity, Coach is so positive, man. That's the one thing I love about Coach. There's never a bad moment with Coach Brown. He always find a way to turn a negative into a positive. And, I took that mentality to the league. It first with me started with Coach Brown. And I took that and was able to take that to the NFL with me, 20-some years ago. So when I see Coach, how he deal with adversity, and how he turns all of that negativity into a positive, I say to myself, wow, we were a 2-3 win ball team the last 2 years. And I knew because of how he was when I was in school and based on what I saw him do at Texas, I knew, if you asked me what I thought our record was going to be, yeah, we're a couple wins off, but you couldn't tell me that we weren't going to be 9-3, 8-4. That was just what I thought, because I knew that you could win through guys believing, guys doing the right things. Coach Brown doing everything he's saying he's going to do. I lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, and they weren't really that talented, in my opinion. They were an up-and-coming team, but they were a well-coached team, a disciplined team, a team that had great camaraderie. And I knew that we were going to have those three components when Coach Brown, as soon as he stepped foot on campus. First thing he said, and I tell people this all the time, he pulled out a notepad and said, tell me what you want, tell me what you need, and I'm going to deliver. And some of the guys was a little unsure if he was going to actually deliver, because some say there were a lot of unfulfilled promises. Now, I don't know where that came from, but when Coach delivered on everything that he said he was going to do, that's when guys bought in. And so to answer your question, Coach turned negatives into positive because he delivers and does everything he says he's going to do.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll go to Hunter. Hunter, you're up.
Hi, Coach. Thank you so much for your time. And also, like JB, I wanted to give you a shout out because I'm from Detroit. I'm a diehard Detroit Lions fan, ride or die. Thank you for your time there. You talked a lot about Storm and what he was able to do for your team last year. And you also talked about how the depth of the team is going to be very important. How have you had the chance to identify some of the newcomers to the team this year with everything kind of being in a state of flux? How have you had the chance to evaluate how they're going to fit into your system?
Well, the newcomers, we don't really have any newcomers at the position. I had a chance to see Kyler and Bryce Watts, to see some of their skill sets and to see some of the things that they are capable of doing last fall. Everybody else was there the year before. So I pretty much got an idea, we pretty much have an idea of what to expect, talent-wise, just putting them all out there and figure out, who's going to be in which spot. But there's no surprises. We pretty much have an idea of what we have on the back end, at my position.
Thank you.
Back to Gregory. Go ahead.
Dre, what do your guys need to improve on in 2020?
Well, we play a lot of bump and run. And so that was the one thing we did a lot of last year. And I'm very critical on technique and doing things the right way. So just being consistent. I told somebody this yesterday. My first year playing for Mac, I didn't particularly technique-wise, I wasn't the most sound technically. Playing the various defenses that I played, I was able to get away with it. I didn't get better until like the end of the season. But I was able to get away with not so good technique because I had a great support system around me. I had, Greg Gellers and Vonnie Holiday that they gave me limited time to cover, so which, resulted in me making a lot of plays. But I didn't really get good until the following year, in '97, because I was constantly working on my craft and my technique every day. So I would say I expect our guys to be better. Now, not having spring ball and summer sessions to improve on the technique, but we have a cut-up tape and we watching tape. So they seeing the proper technique and what is required, come, summer camp and whenever we start. But that's the biggest thing I would say: consistency in our technique.
Go ahead, Gregory.
How do you go about coaching that? And I guess how do you plan to when they get back on campus, knowing that you didn't have spring ball or their summer sessions and you're only relying on tape right now?
Well, you again, tape, talking them through it, explaining it. Again, you talk about how guys make plays. I try to talk my guys through visualizing, yourself making that play, visualizing yourself being in certain positions. And so you just got to be very strategic and detailed in your teaching and explaining, what it is that is required, and just, constantly hamper on it every day. And then once we start up, just continue to push on it, and hopefully guys that get it understand it, and then we can move forward.
All right, we're back to JB.
Hey, Coach, one more question. I think we'd all be remiss if we didn't kind of get your feedback on the Last Dance documentary. I know that you were spending time, I believe you were at Carolina during his second three-peat or whatnot. So definitely want to hear your feedback on Jordan just being kind of like a part of that legacy at North Carolina, what it was like for you when you were attending there while he was winning those second three-peats, and your overall reaction to the Last Dance and the impact that it can have on Carolina recruiting.
I was telling my son, it's crazy, but obviously, guys that know me, I grew up a big Deion Sanders fan, right? So I was telling my sons, because I don't think kids do enough of it, in my opinion, and I base it on my kids and some of the kids I've been around. But, I practice all Deion Sanders moves, right? He's dancing and celebrating and, spinning the ball. We both played football and baseball, but, I call myself a hooper growing up too, right? I realized that I wasn't going to hoop once I stopped growing, right? I got stuck at 5'9", and I wasn't able to grow anymore, but I still idolized and looked up to Michael Jordan. I was a big Carolina basketball guy, but I used to practice MJ moves in the backyard. Some of his moves, that shot he hit against Cleveland, against Craig Elo and those guys when he was hanging in double pump. I used to practice that move in my backyard, and which was crazy, but that was some of the things that I would do as a kid growing up, to see it, right, and to hear him talk about it, to see some of all the stuff that he did, what made him great, man, is crazy. Being a part of the brand since 2004, seeing Fred Winfield and some of the videos, seeing Howard White, some of the guys in his personal space, in his room, I've been around those guys. I've been in his personal space. And so to be able to see that and say, I was one of those guys at some point, it's pretty cool. I don't really, again, I don't tell my kids, I mentioned it to them a little bit. My wife was there and around, but it's pretty cool. I don't really like to bring it up much, but to be in his personal space, like I've been to the Derby with him, he bring his players with him to the Derby and hang out. I've been around some of the craziest people, but it's pretty cool. And just for the record, he talks trash now, because me, I feel like football players are the best athletes, right? I have debates with Rashid and some of the other guys that I know that play basketball, but he'll run the football player through mud now. He make us seem like, we the stupidest dudes because we run around hitting each other, right? And so, but it's crazy. He'll make you feel bad about it. And so one of the last stories I had, or one of the last conversations I had with him in person, we were out one evening in Charlotte, and we had a debate about who are the better athletes, football and basketball players. And then he said, John, let me ask you a question. He said, how old were you when you retired? I said, about 32, 33. And then he asked, he was like, how old are you right now? I said, about 35, 36. It was something like that. He said, I won an MVP at 35. So he shut me up real fast, and said, homeboy, when you was retired and 3-4 years out of the game, I was winning championships and MVPs. And so, it's pretty cool to see all of that stuff, man. Like, he really has played a tremendous role in my life and where I am today. My kids, You know, I tell people all the time, once you get a part of that brand, you in for life. You know, I can pick up the phone right now and call, you know, my Connect and ask for Christmas shoes or spring shoes, you know, for my kids. Or, you know, we starting up in the fall. Once we go back, send me a summer package. Then send me a package. And so, but that's, you know, through the relationship. You know, that's, you know, through the benefits of being a Tar Heel. And I'm forever grateful for that. And partly a lot of that have to do with Mack Brown for me. Mack Brown giving me an opportunity to come to University of North Carolina. None of that would be so if it wasn't for Coach Brown.
Appreciate you, Coach.
All right, just a couple more here. We got Greg Barnes. Go ahead.
Dre, I know you worked with Roger Ferguson with the Hammer Down Hills youth program in Charlotte. Just
Yes,
curious
sir.
your opinion on what's special about that program and how it's beneficial to that community.
Well, you know, again, it's funny that I was about to drop the Hammer Down video. I got a little video that the Rams did. I was going to drop it on a Throwback Thursday coming up. I don't know if it was going to be this week or next week, but it was pretty cool, man. You know, again, coming to Charlotte and realizing I had a lot of kids, right? So I was going to be forced to be very involved in the community. Roger and I came up with the idea was to change the culture in Myers Park and, you know, create a good environment around our kids to go to high school. And but creating that environment started with, you know, proper teaching and the proper guidance for football and teaching them the right way, because it was so much bad coaching and teaching at the youth age and guys getting injured and guys getting turned away from the sport that it was critical for us. And so, you know, again, you know, getting connected with some of the guys I knew, and Moose Muhammad and Frank Garcia and Dean May, we all came together. You know, Coach Kavanaugh, who used to coach at Carolina, Jim Kavanaugh, you know, we all came together and basically brought our kids, and we basically was able to create a culture in Myers Park at a youth football age, at a Pop Warner age, and was able to change the mindset in the area. And I think, you know, for us, it was just about teaching good football. And because of that, we're able to get some college football players out of that. You know, a lot of kids, you know, benefited from our organization that, you know, went to South Carolina, went to different schools. And so for me, that's the ultimate goal. That was the ultimate reward, was to see our kids benefit from that. And so now, you know, Myers Park, which my kids was able to go to school there, you know, they were able to have some pretty good runs and do some pretty good things. And so to me, that's what it's all about.
Good, Greg.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Dre.
All right, this will be our last one. We'll go to Pat James.
Hey, Coach. Just kind of, Patrice was a guy who you obviously had seen, like, at least watch in person a little bit more than some of those other guys in your room, just entering last year. Just kind of with him going through what he went through, just like how much did you really kind of learn about him as a person and a leader, just the way he kind of went through last season?
Well, you know, I've been knowing Trees for a while. You know, he's probably, him and Wolford and Dorn, when I first got hired, probably had the toughest task because they have had so many DB coaches the last 4 years. And that's the hardest thing, man. Like, that's the other thing that I didn't mention about, you know, they've been taught 4 different techniques and philosophies the last 4 years. And I can't even imagine what that would have done for me if I was in their shoes. And so, but just watching them from afar, I told Patrice when I first got hired what I thought he needed to improve in. And leadership was the most important thing that I wanted Patrice to improve in, and accountability. Him setting a great example for his, you know, for the Storm Ducks and, you know, for the Trey Morrisons, for some of the guys that was younger. And he embraced that challenge. And, you know, last year, you know, he was named, like, I think, leader, you know, like we had like a captain or hard worker of the spring. And, you know, Patrice was named, you know, he got that award, got that honor. So for me, it was a joy to see him receive that award. And I think he was trending in the right direction. He was going to have a great year, but it was, you know, he had that injury against Miami. But Treese has done a lot of great things. And I think he's handled this situation with me being the fourth corners coach probably better than anybody. Him coming, you know, Coach Brown coming in. I mean, he's done a tremendous job. And I'm excited to see, you know, this, you know what, I'm excited to see what happens for Patrice this fall because, You know, he had another setback and the ACL injury, and you know, he could have chose to go back home or to give up with football or to do a lot of different things, but he chose to stick with it. And he's been more positive than anybody about him coming back and, you know, what this season's going to look like for him. And so, and his leadership skills and qualities are, to me, is amazing. So I couldn't ask for anything more out of Patrice. I'm excited what the future holds for him as well.